Hi, my name's Joe Mudd. I teach in the Department of Religious Studies at Gonzaga University. When I was asked to reflect on what part of Lonergan's thought I keep coming back to in the present moment, it's his little piece on the dialectic of authority, and I'm sure others will identify this piece as well, because it speaks to an environment, context, somewhat like our own. It's delivered as a lecture in 1974, and this is the same year, of course, that Nixon resigns. So it's in the midst of the Watergate scandal. But also it comes on the heels of a decade of really trauma in our national life, from the assassination of John F. Kennedy through the years of civil rights protests and emergent legislation and the end of Jim Crow, through the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy in 1968. And then, of course, the Vietnam War and a draft. I can't imagine what that would have been like. These last months have been extremely difficult, and questions around authority and authenticity have come to the fore. And so I've had a chance to actually teach this text in a couple of contexts within the last few months with graduate students. And it is striking to me how this text resonates with them. How even for those of us who are students of Lonergan, it might not be the most thorough, systematic treatment we would hope for on the subject. It's somewhat circular and lapidary, but it is in that quite evocative of the situation we find ourselves in. And so for my graduate students, it's been very evocative for them, evoking the kinds of questions that really get to the depth dimension of what we're experiencing as a culture now. And the one little phrase in there that little sentence that I keep coming back to and pondering over and trying to figure out what we do something about is his simple claim that unauthentic subjects get themselves unauthentic authorities. And so when we point the finger at people in positions of power, and there's plenty of finger pointing to go around, we also have to ask ourselves the question, what have I done to contribute to this state of affairs? And so that's the thing that I keep coming back to, is to think about not only persons in positions of power who are wielding that power as naked power, as an emperor with no clothes. We still have the reality that we, the citizenry, put that person in power, and we have to ask ourselves questions about why, what are the values or disvalues that are orienting our way of being in the world, and that are leading to situations where this kind of distortion of authority can happen. So Lonergan in the dialectic of authority is very clear that authority comes from the community, and whoever is in a position of authority gets that authority from some degree of consent. And so it forces us to ask questions about ourselves. And so, like a lot of Lonergan's writings, it's one of these places where you both see the diagnosis of a cultural moment and think, that's it, that's the problem. And then you realize that also the problem is you. And so it's one of these very difficult places, and a place that calls for ongoing discernment in our own lives, as at the same time as we engage in critique of the cultural situation and criticize leaders for their own failures. So that's where I keep coming back to. And if I could urge anyone to read anything, it's very short, so you can read it over and over again, and it gets better and better every time. But that's it from me. I hope everyone's having a great time with Lonergan on the Edge. It's one of the best conferences in the calendar. Thanks.